Minister of the Ministry of Tertiary Education and Skills Training, Ms. Angela Sinasui-Gervais, Permanent Secretary, the Ministry of Tertiary Education and Skills Training, Mr. David Baker, Executive Director for University Technology Park at the Illinois Institute of Technology, Mr. Kwesi Mutima, Deputy Chairman of the Board of Governors of the University of Trinidad and Tobago, Chairman of Agencies of the Ministry of Tertiary Education and Skills Training, Professor Diane Reinsing, President of the University of Trinidad and Tobago, Dr. Fazal Ali, Provost of the University of Trinidad and Tobago, Professor Winston Sweet, Vice Provost, Planning and Development of the University of Trinidad and Tobago, Professor Valerie Stout, Vice Provost, Postgraduate Studies and Research of the University of Trinidad and Tobago, Mr. Navneet Budai, Vice President of Business Development and Marketing of the University of Trinidad and Tobago, Senior Academic and Corporate Staff of the University of Trinidad and Tobago, specially invited guests of Invest TT, TT CSI and Export TT, and other specially invited guests, members of the media, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. I am Lorraine Crosby. I am the University of Trinidad and Tobago's Administrative Officer assigned to the Tamina Development Group, and it is my distinct pleasure and privilege to welcome you on behalf of the University of Trinidad and Tobago and to thank you all for attending this morning's seminar entitled Leveraging a University and Technology Park to Support Growth of Innovation Ecosystems. Permit me a few moments to extend a very special welcome to our panel of speakers this morning. Senator, the Honourable Fazal Karim, the Minister in the Ministry of Tertiary Education and Skills Training. Welcome, sir. The University is extremely honoured to host as the feature speaker our distinguished guest, Mr. David Baker, the Executive Director, University Technology Park at the Illinois Institute of Technology. We welcome you, sir. Our President, Professor Diane Reinsing, President of the University of Trinidad and Tobago, Dr. Fazal Ali, the Provost of the University of Trinidad and Tobago, and Mr. Navneet Budai, the Vice President of Business Development and Marketing at the University of Trinidad and Tobago. Welcome to you all, gentlemen. We begin today's agenda with welcome greetings from the University, delivered by Professor Diane Reinsing, our President.
Thank you very much, Lauren, chairpersons of this morning's proceeding. Senator the Honourable Fazal Karim, Minister of Tertiary Education and Skills Training, Mr. David Baker, our specially invited guest, Executive Director for University Technology Park at the Illinois Institute of Technology, members of the Board of Governors, University of Trinidad and Tobago, chairpersons of agencies under MTest, our Provost, Dr. Fazal Ali, Vice Provosts, members of senior corporate staff of UTT, other members of the academic staff of UTT, specially invited guests of Invest TT, TTCSI, and Export TT, members of the media, colleagues. A very special welcome on behalf of the University of Trinidad and Tobago to what I prefer to call a dialogue rather than a seminar here this morning on the topic, leveraging a science and technology path to support growth of innovative ecosystems. The University of Trinidad and Tobago, as a national university, is proud to be associated with this forum discussion in conjunction with MTest. And I want to personally here commend our minister for being the architect of this activity. And in fact, so many other activities and initiatives geared to bringing about the desired socio-economic transformation of our society through a knowledge-driven society and a knowledge-driven economy. Minister, we commend you for this. I consider this forum here this morning to be very timely and relevant from a number of perspectives, and I just want to mention a few of them. First, it's the strategic intent of the government, and in fact past governments, to diversify our economy away from an overdependence on a hydrocarbon-based economy, and that's a fact. We have been trying this. Secondly, the successful economies of the future, and when I say the future is now, will be those economies not with vast natural resources. We have so many examples of them. Our own neighbor Venezuela is an example. But so those are not the successful economies of the future. The successful economies of the future will be those which use knowledge in a creative and innovative way, leveraging science and technology in the process to create new goods and services, and by extension, create wealth for all its people. The third reason why I think this forum here is very relevant and timely is that the University of Trinidad and Tobago, as a national university, and whose mission is to be an entrepreneurial university, will be launching its signature campus at Tamana, Wallerfield, in February next year. And this will be, among other things, our innovation and design campus, geared to harness the creativity and innovation of our people into new products and services geared to the global market. This new campus is envisaged to be central to the Knowledge Park ecosystem at Wallerfield. And the fourth reason why I think that this is very, very relevant is that there's an urgent wake-up call for all of us here in TNT to realize that if we are going to survive in this highly competitive global technology-driven society, we need to move away from being merely importers of goods and services, in fact, from being mere traders, to become more entrepreneurial, capitalizing on the knowledge economy, coupled with creative and an innovative society, to become exporters of innovative products and services, with our market being not 1.3 million, as I've been saying, not 5 million in the CARICOM market, but 7.5 billion. We have to move towards that. It has been proven in many countries and regions around the world that the development of successful science and technology parks, what I now prefer to call knowledge parks, to drive the innovative ecosystem, have resulted in more sustained economic growth and, by extension, significant social improvements, leading to improved quality of life. Yes, it leads, brothers and sisters, to a more competitive society. But to remain competitive, we must always remain one step ahead of our competitors. There's no way. As I said at the recently concluded conference on criminology, if you want to address the problem of crime, then we have to, our protective services must keep one step ahead of the criminals. There's no other way. And the classic example of the Kodak company, which I think is now that lesson is being taught in every business school throughout the world, and I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. Kodak, everybody knew, and probably, I'm sure we are in this generation here, that Kodak was the only thing we knew, right? Remember that popular song, Don't Take My Kodachrome Away? Right, it was the hit tune, right? And what happened? They were the first people to actually come up with a digital camera. But they were such a successful company that they didn't need it. And they just left it on the drawing board. And what has happened today? You don't hear of Kodak again. They're gone out of business. And I think this is a lesson for all of us here. If we have to remain competitive, we have to keep one step ahead of our competitors and making use of science and technology to drive that. At the World Economic Forum recently, in their Global Competitiveness Report, and I quote here, in the long run, standards of living can be expanded only with innovation. This requires an environment that is conducive to innovative activity, supported by both the public and private sectors. In particular, this means, and I just continue the quote, this means sufficient investment in research and development, especially by the private sector, and that is sorely lacking in our ecosystem here in Trinidad and Tobago. The presence of high-quality scientific research institutions, extensive collaboration and research between universities and industry, and the protection of intellectual property, end of quote. And I go further and quote from the National Research Council in its study on research parks best practices. And I quote, research parks are seen increasingly around the world as a means to create dynamic clusters that accelerate economic growth and international competitiveness. They are widely considered to be a proven tool to encourage the formation of innovative, high-technology companies. They are also seen as an effective means to generate employment and to make existing companies more competitive. Science and technology parks, whether we talk about the Silicon Valleys or the Silicon Alleys, and soon to be the Tamana Park, can significantly enhance the competitiveness of companies and entrepreneurs within their own regions, as well as contribute to the global economic development through innovation, entrepreneurship, and the transfer of knowledge and technology. But colleagues, we are talking about science and technology parks and innovation parks and knowledge parks. But what really is such a park? Well, these parks offer a high-quality operational environment for technology-oriented companies. The main tasks include the establishment, acceleration, and internationalization of business activities in close synergy with universities, especially those which are science and technology and engineering focused. Science Parks offers business development and networking services, and this is very important, plus synergy and image benefits. Such parks offer customers, and the customers are the research institutes, startup and established technology companies, etc., an innovative operating environment that activates growth, business development services, cooperation in programs and projects, and key contacts and network connections, creating an ecosystem that supports innovation at every stage of the company's growth. And that is what we intend to do at our Tamana Alley, if you want to call it. In summary, sisters and brothers, an S&T Knowledge Park is where, and I quote from the Illinois Institute of Technology, and I think that's a wonderful quote. A knowledge park is where intellectual property meets real property. I quote that. A knowledge park is where intellectual property meets real property. End of quote. The key functions of a science park concept include, among other things, through a dynamic and innovative mix of policies, programs, quality space and facilities, and high-value added services, they contribute to economic development by, one, stimulating and managing the flow of knowledge and technology between universities and companies, facilitating the communication between companies, entrepreneurs, and technicians, providing environments that embrace a culture of innovation, creativity, and quality. In closing, I look forward to a very stimulating dialogue, which I hope will not end here, but will reverberate for years to come along the corridors of every educational institution here in Trinidad and Tobago, and indeed the Caribbean, every private sector company boardroom of our private sector companies, and in the boardrooms of our policymakers, leading to the development of a sustainable, innovative ecosystem here in Trinidad and Tobago. And as I quoted before, I'd just like to leave this little quote, which I have coined, and I think is relevant. Silver and gold have we none. Oil and gas will run out soon. But what we bring to you today is knowledge, coupled with an innovation ecosystem to create wealth for the benefit of all its people. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, at this time we'll treat you to a virtual tour of the Tamana campus, which was mentioned by our president. Ladies and gentlemen, that was a virtual tour of the University of Trinidad and Tobago's signature building complex. This is currently under construction at the Tamina Intech Park. At this time, I invite Mr. Navneet Budai, the Vice President of Business Development and Marketing of the University of Trinidad and Tobago, to introduce our feature speaker. Thank you.
Good morning, colleagues, and thank you very much, Lorraine, Minister, colleagues at the head table. It's really great to see so many of our UTT staff here as well, and we all know we have been part of the strategic planning process, and I'm sure today is going to assist us in terms of, I think, delivering more on that mandate of completing our strategic plan. Let me say before I introduce formally Mr. Baker, last year UTT was part of a forum with about 26 universities in Utah, the University of Utah. And there was a lot of discussion there about university technology parks. And IIT, and this is not the Indian Institute of Technology, I think the IIT of the US, Illinois Institute of Technology, was one of the leaders in this regard. And I will tell you why. It was one of the first, I think, in terms of a technology park, which was not driven primarily by government or industry. It was driven by a university. And that university took a decision on one man's idea, and that is Mr. David Baker. Let's give him a round of applause for some of And sometime in 2001, he conceptualized this, and today, 13, 14 years later, it has come to fruition. And he's here to let us know how we build that success story. And I think for him, it's a personal success story. He is one of the most extensively, I think he has spoken extensively all over the world, Mexico. In fact, next week or 2 weeks, I was in China. It was difficult for us to even get him here, just to speak to us and discuss a possible relationship between both universities, IIT, the Technology Park, UTT. And let us welcome our Deputy Chairman, Mr. Kwesi Mutema. Welcome, Deputy Chair. So he has spoken extensively in terms of these technology parks and how they impact in terms of economic development, and in particular, how they support innovation ecosystems. Mr. Baker is the immediate past president, and this is important to note, he's the immediate past president of the Association of University Research Parks. And I think that's why his role here is really great for us to benefit from. And has participated in numerous workshops, conferences, consultancies, developing university research parks all over the world. He has responsibility for conceptualizing, and in terms of the conception stage, planning, fundraising, marketing, and also developing a four-building technology park complex on the main complex at Illinois Institute of Technology in Chicago, Illinois. Today we have with us, and we have apologies from Ms. Raquel Moses, who is the president of InvestTT, Mr. Kelvin Mahavir, the president of ETech, Mr. Niraj Tiwari. There's another competing conference right next door on economic matters that you will be hearing a lot more on the news later on today, and that's why they are not here. But they will be meeting with Mr. Baker at 12:30 today at the Hyatt. Again, this is our collaborative. I think we are starting a collaboration in terms of getting all the key players responsible and working with us with the technology park concept. So in terms of the Illinois Institute of Technology, Mr. Baker, he has already supported the development of many companies, 3 of which have grown to over 100 employees. There are many graduates that have also come out of that program, which he will talk about. And he has, with his colleagues, already over $200 million in investments and grants. So let us please welcome Mr. David Baker.
Well, everybody, it's my great pleasure to be here, and please excuse my infirmity. I'm going to try to talk from here. Yeah, and if I need to, I'll sit down, okay? But I can't stand the idea of sitting behind somewhere sharing these ideas with you. First of all, I just want to express my deep appreciation to the University of Trinidad and Tobago and to the government of Trinidad and Tobago for inviting me to come here. This is my first visit to your wonderful country. I'm looking forward to more visits here. My only previous Caribbean experience was in Haiti in 2006, and Haiti is definitely different than, unfortunately different than Trinidad and Tobago. But as Naveen said, I've had the opportunity since I developed this park to become part of really the movement, the modern movement of the transformation of local economies based on the partnership between universities and industry and government. And I think that Dr. Naren Singh really said it well in terms of creating a conceptual framework for why we're in this business. It's only, frankly, a few years that when the world woke up to the fact that maybe we are in a knowledge economy and that most of the knowledge is generated at universities, and therefore maybe there's a process that needs to be in place to drag that knowledge out of universities. And really for the last part of the 20th century, there was always that concept that this is a great way to build economies through university research. But the truth is that it took forever to ever get anything, any great idea off of a university campus and into a commercial environment. In fact, I was just listening yesterday to a wonderful technology that you've developed here and thinking, now how can we accelerate the development of this technology out of UTT to become, because it really is a kind of a world-changing technology, right? And at least I thought it was, and I'm going to look into it more. So what I want to do for you and with you today is to take the next half an hour or so to walk through our story. This is our story, not your story. So don't say that I'm not being prescriptive about it, but I want to share with you all of the pieces of the evolution of the University Technology Park that both led to the park and then are the pieces that allow us to be successful at University Technology Park. It's not us alone. That's one of the big messages of my presentation today. It's not us alone. So I'm going to go forward with it now and talk. First of all, I want to discuss probably the most important part of it is what are the innovation ecosystems that are present or could be developed in your community, which are the ones that we chose, because in the end, a park needs to serve the economy and the research and the technologies that are present, where you do have a real opportunity to establish an ecosystem. So I'm going to talk about that. Then I'm going to talk about the role of universities and research institutions, as I mentioned before, of generating the ideas. What are the mechanisms of moving the technologies out of the university and into commercial use? What are the key support mechanisms that we have developed in Chicago to do this? And what do you need to think about as part of this? It doesn't just happen. And finally, and for a good part of the time, talk about the role of our University Technology Park in supporting this development. We'll open up then for discussion. So, first point I want to make is that you need to have a market. There's got to be someone that wants to buy your product. And most of the time, at least in the businesses that I'm going to be talking about, big companies are looking around for new products and processes to buy. And the little companies and the ideas that are coming out of that are being generated sometimes off university campus, sometimes by individuals, but ultimately they're going to end up, particularly in life sciences, being bought by some of these great companies here. These are the companies that are present in Chicago, and on the top are all the life sciences companies, the biopharmaceutical companies that are located in the Chicago region that we work with. And the lower level are major seed and agricultural biotechnology companies. So these are the end users, shall we say, of the new technologies of the life sciences industry, which is one of the two clusters that I'm going to talk about in this presentation. The second group of big companies are in the energy and electric power industries and clean tech, because this is the other cluster that we've concentrated in our university park. Now we've got here the two largest electric power generators, ComEd and Ameren, and then Eaton, Siemens, Schneider, and S&C are major suppliers to the electric power industry. And we picked this because clean tech is an emerging, very important area in the United States. I've learned in my day here that you don't really worry about all that stuff because your electricity is so cheap. You can't really justify doing all this crazy stuff that the rest of us are trying to do to slow down energy use. So you want to kind of think about it just in a general principle to do this. So these are the end users. And as you imagine the development of your clusters, think what are the key verticals that you may want to exploit in the development of the new diversified economy, and how can the university respond? Does it have the technical expertise? And how, in the development of the park, can you shape the real estate to match what the companies might need? Very, very important. In my case, I started out thinking about the life sciences cluster. That required me to raise 4 times more money than if I'd just done something in IT, right? IT, all you need is a desk and a computer and an internet connection. In life sciences, you need very sophisticated laboratories that cost, between, in my case, I don't know how you figure this, US is between $400 and $1,000 a square foot to build that space. The next part underneath those big companies are service providers. The partners of the big companies and the little companies are the law firms, the accountants. A lot of people don't think about them. The consultants that are needed and the big venture capital firms that are needed to help shape the intellectual property. These are a number of these K&L Gates and Deloitte, Barnes and Thornburg. These are firms that actually manage intellectual property. So you have to, at the same time, think, well, do we have here in Port of Spain, do we have the requisite legal firms? Do we have an intellectual property lawyer operating here? Because any intellectual property that you want to generate real value off must have international patent protection. It's got to have it. So you've got to find out what, either here or somewhere else, you've got to find partners to help you with that. The other part is you've got to have research institutions, right? These are the major research institutions, entities in the Chicago region and in Illinois from which we draw many of the ideas that are the foundation for our companies. And notice, in my case, Illinois Institute of Technology is just one of the major research universities in Chicago. Now you have, 2 universities here, right? So, three. So you need to think, even though many of you are from UTT and you're focused on this, you should start to begin to think, how do we collaborate with the other universities? Because they may be generating intellectual property that could result in companies that could be part of the park and could leverage the resources that you're going to need to help the companies move forward. This is, of course, in my case, I built my little technology park, life science focused, and I don't even have a medical school at my university. Everybody said, well, why'd you do that? Well, I did that because I saw in 2001 that neither the University of Chicago, which is 10 minutes from Illinois Institute of Technology, or Northwestern, which is 20 minutes from Illinois Institute of Technology, both have giant medical schools. They fight each other all the time, okay? They can't stand being in the same room. Although they've been forced a little bit to play nice recently, they generally would not work together. So I figured, well, I'll build a life sciences focused technology park on neutral ground, and then their companies will feel more comfortable coming to, from both sides. And that's exactly how it's worked out. So it's an important idea for you to think about. Don't just think, well, UTT Tamana campus. Think about how do you work, and the minister can help you with this, right? You're in charge of all of them. So it's an interesting thing to think about. And so I have a partnership with all of the universities. In fact, the University of Illinois, Chicago has a tech park too, and we actually collaborate. We engage in what's called a co-opetition. So we compete, but we also collaborate. And in the end, what we're trying to do is find the best location for the companies. So this is just a quick review of the technologies that are coming out of our universities that allowed us to imagine developing these two, to support the development of these 2 clusters. In life sciences, look at this. We have a terrific concentration, as I just mentioned, in Chicago in life sciences. So this is why we started to work in this area. And in energy, our university, Illinois Institute of Technology, is the leader in energy research. in Chicago, even though we're the smallest university, we actually have the Wanger Institute for Sustainable Energy Research is embedded in our park. And as is the Galvin Center for Electricity Innovation, and a lot of our battery and storage research is literally embedded. They have offices and research labs in our park, and they provide a lot of the ideas for the development of new companies in this area. University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign, which is 2.5 hours south of us, also provide a lot of new kinds of technologies in this area. And then Argonne National Laboratory, which is a federally funded national lab, just received a $125 million 5-year grant to develop new energy storage technologies. And we're hopeful those companies might end up coming to IIT. And as another example of this partnership with universities, Northwestern students at Northwestern University developed a new technology for silicon anodes for lithium-ion batteries that'll improve the life of the lithium battery in your phone, right? So you care about this company if it succeeds. This could be a world-changing little company. They ended up moving into our park because we were the only park that had the quality facilities that they needed for their continued materials research. Okay, let's look then at some of the mechanisms. Remember I said earlier, one of the biggest problems with university-based research is it takes forever for anybody to understand whether it's got any commercial value. And really, until the new century in Chicago, our universities basically did almost nothing to support this process. So think about that. That's just 14 years ago, right? 13 years ago. So there's not much difference in time between what you're getting ready to do here and what we did. We did nothing. They had technology transfer operations, but they did not spend any time trying to help the faculty or the students develop companies. Now, the universities have come together to develop many new resources that are very important for our park. The first one there, Chicago Innovation Mentors, is the result of the Searle Foundation, one of the former big drug companies in America, forcing Northwestern University of Chicago and the University of Illinois to collaborate on medical research. Chicago Innovation Mentors provides no-charge mentoring services to faculty members that are developing promising technologies in healthcare and life sciences. And they have like 80 clients right now. 4 of the companies in my park came through that system, and are actually, while they're in my park, they're getting mentoring and support from that organization. The Clinical and Translational Science Award, CTSA, is a federally funded initiative to support clinical trials and accelerate the process of moving through trials and to help in the identification of promising therapies coming out. Also very important, and there's one located at each one of the big research universities. The final area here, which is very important, is the fact that it was a not-for-profit association called the Illinois Biotechnology Organization, IBIO, which is catalyzing. Their job since 2001 is to catalyze the whole life sciences cluster. We are important members of IBIO. We participate, like IBIO Index is their annual conference that's coming up in 2-3 weeks. We will be there. And they run this business plan competition every year for the purpose of identifying and awarding cash prizes to very promising young companies. 3 of those companies are in my park. So this is a very important component of partnership, is to look to your business, whatever cluster you pick. And I'm not saying pick life sciences. Whatever clusters you want to get involved, this is the way of organizing the business community and supporting the organization of the business community so they can also support the development of young companies. The funding for this is a membership organization. They don't get government money. This is all private money. And the big pharmaceutical firms are all members of this organization. And they're paying dues and supporting it, and also looking for promising technologies as they come out of the marketplace. Here's what we're doing in life sciences. in energy. We have 3 organizations now that have come up in Chicago in the last 5 years. So this is just 5 years. We just kind of declared that we wanted to see in Illinois an accelerated evolution of the clean energy industry, alternative energy industry. When I say that, what do I mean? I mean alternative sources of energy, alternative ways to distribute energy, and energy efficiency for buildings and vehicles. That's mainly the three areas of technology that we're exploiting. So 6 of the richest people in Chicago said, we want to see a new energy industry grow up, and they formed this organization called Clean Energy Trust, and they funded it. And their sole purpose is to identify promising technologies that could then start to build a successful clean energy cluster in the Chicago region. One of the mechanisms they use is a U.S. Department of Energy funded program called the Clean Energy Challenge, where every year they go through a selection process and then award to a company and to a student-owned company, a student-owned idea and a non-student-owned idea, a major $100,000 award to help them get started. 3 of those companies are in my incubator. Yesterday was the Clean Energy Challenge award ceremony, and my colleague, Dan Marcel, who's the director of the Tech Park, I'm executive director, he does all the day-to-day work, he went to this all day looking for companies, promising companies that we could then invite to become tenants in our park. We provide a discount for anybody that wins to come right to the park, and because we know we can support them to grow, and this has been a very successful strategy for us. So once again, though, what you're looking at is a series of non-for-profit organizations, generally, some driven by government funding and some not, that are helping identify the technologies that later could be supported by the park. The Energy Foundry is another organization was created by state government through a law passed in Illinois in 2011 to transform our electric power grid. And we then, as a part of that, I helped organize something called the Illinois Smart Grid Regional Innovation Cluster, sounds just like the words that you were using, solely focused on leveraging the decision by our state to invest $3.2 billion over the next 10 years in transformation of the electric power grid to find promising technologies that could help with this. And if you know, if you're familiar with smart grid, it's basically they have to dedicate 2% of their total research dollars to small companies. They can get these grants, and many of our little companies have been able to come to my park and pay rent because they receive these small business innovation research grants. And then I mentioned these are the funds that have been generated in Illinois that have directly supported the early stage growth. So, you know, we talk about another major point to think about as you develop this. Where is the money going to come from to help these companies grow? And it really shouldn't come from the government. This is a real issue. So many countries I go to and I talk about development of science parks, and the question gets down to, okay, well, the government's going to set up a fund to invest in the companies. And I say, well, you know, the trouble is for that is that the risk issues are so different between when the government invests in something and when private investors invest their own money with the hope to get a reward. You can supplement it, and we have tried in Illinois in many states where they don't have an active venture community. Many states have done this. They've set up their own fund because they get so frustrated because the poor companies will need, you know, probably need $2, $5, $10 million to get to a point where they're actually able to sell product. And so the question you have to ask yourself is, as you put this ecosystem together, what is the strength of your investment community? You certainly, unlike many countries, I mean, if I went to, I've been asked to go to the Dominican Republic and talk to them about it, but I can imagine, frankly, they would just laugh at me if they said, well, we have private investors here, but I can take a look at Trinidad and Tobago and say, there are people of wealth here who might very well want to get involved in building your economy by taking the risk and investing in these companies. I don't know whether you have venture funds or not here yet, or angel funds. We didn't talk about it, probably don't. But this is going to be a part of the exercise that you'll have to go through. Okay, so the rest of my talk now, next 7-8 minutes, I'm going to run through the park. Where does the park fit? First thing I wanted to mention, though, quickly, is that even as we speak about science parks, a whole new movement is occurring in the United States and across the world in terms of creating new spaces, new ideas for how to bring intellectual ideas together with real property. Co-working spaces. Have you heard of these? I don't know if you're... A co-working space is basically a form of incubator where it's a very open environment. Not a lot of expense in building out the space, but you have desks, basically. The individuals come in and they rent a seat in the space. They're generally focused on the digital economy. We have a very successful one in Chicago I'm on the board of called 1871. It's called 1871. It's symbolic because that was the year of the Great Fire that destroyed our city. I now have, my park has 24 companies in it. It's had about 40 graduates. These people opened their doors in May of 2012. They had 65 companies. But they're life science, they're digital companies. Everybody calls himself a company. He's got a laptop and an idea, right? But they've generated real economic activity. And one of the questions we're raising now, all of us, are, should we start to think about this kind of a space that we integrate into our park? And so that's what I was talking to your colleagues yesterday about the idea on the Tamana campus. You could almost start out by just declaring an open area that you haven't built out, put a bunch of desks in there and say, let's get the kids in here and start building companies. You know, you don't really have to do a lot. But our co-working space 1871 works though, because the entire community, the venture community, the business community, the universities and the venture community have all come together to support this activity. My university rents, we spend $30,000 a year for the right to sponsor this facility, and we have a suite there because we want our students. In fact, this weekend, starting today, 50 of our students are going to be spending the weekend there working on creating the prototype companies. And then they're going to be judged on Sunday by venture leaders. Very exciting area. And when you all come to Chicago, those of you that want to come, we will definitely go visit 1871. Behind this one, another one is called Coalition Energy, just opened in November, focused on the energy companies. So I'm partnering with them. I'm going to set up a formal partnership. If those companies grow, they come to my park. And the third one is called Matter. That was just conceptualized and going to be funded by about $5 million in state money, focused on early stage life science companies before they actually need laboratories. The second area is called our Accelerators. Accelerators are a short-term, rapid-fire program to see whether a company is worth investing in. They go through a competition, they bring in 10 companies, they go through a boot camp for 3 months. They're funded by in the United States, they're funded by private developers, private individuals, because the individuals want to see, they'll put $50,000 in front of each of these companies, and they will see, can you develop an idea in 3 months that is worth being invested in by a venture capitalist? And they promise them, at the end of the 3 months, a pitch session where they actually go and test their ideas out, and the purpose of that is to actually get them funded. So this is a very interesting program. Some work, some don't, but this is one of the hottest things going on in the United States now. There are 2 accelerators embedded in 1871. They have office space right there where their companies go. Finally, the most recent activity going on in the United States, and actually starting across the world, are these maker spaces. I don't know if you've heard about these. Maker spaces are basically taking advantage of the advent of affordable 3D printers, right? So you all know about 3D printers? So these things, you know, anybody can buy 2 of these, set them in a room, invite a bunch of little guys in with a great idea, and help them develop their product. This has now moved so rapidly that there's now something called Tech Shop. I just visited in Chandler, Arizona 10 days ago, where their private developers got 80 of these across the United States, totally devoted to people that have physical projects. So I would suggest this is an important component that you should think about in the development of your park, is creating a 3D printing entity that's available. We happen to have one for our students in my park, and the companies are allowed to use it. They hire students as interns. The interns then are producing prototypes for the companies. It's a tremendous advantage because they're basically paying pennies on the dollar for this sophisticated equipment. Okay, well, my little time I have left, let me go through the park itself. That's the little time I left. I'm supposed to be Anyway. So first of all, as I said before, there are like 8 parks in Chicago. I mean, in Illinois, almost every one of them but one is directly connected to a university. Almost all of them have been designed and built since 2000. Okay, this is not a recent, parks have been around for 50 years, but the advent of parks in Illinois dates from really, except for one facility, dates from 2000. Our park, we like to say, number one, this is right down, basically right in Chicago. We're only 30 blocks from downtown Chicago. We leverage, our whole park is organized around the idea of leveraging the resources, the academic research equipment and student resources of the university. As I said before, we conceptualized ourselves from the beginning to focus on science and tech business, and we provide, when we started, we provided a suite of spaces that allowed companies to come in, get their first money, come into a very small lab, and then grow. As the company grows, they could pick larger and larger labs until finally they would leave and move on to a new facility. Our park is a startup-focused park. It's not a mature. It's not a park. You might have in Tamana. You may have an opportunity to do both. And when I talk about that, because a lot of parks are focused on large land areas where you have major companies will come in and buy the land and set up their, or rent the land and set up their own facility. That's a very common model in science parks. My park is called a multi-tenant facility. Now you can see it right here. See how close we are to downtown. So this is the main part of the park right here. We're going to talk about the specific buildings. That's the incubator building. This is the tower where we have our IT companies, and then this is a growth company space, and then this is a wholly owned subsidiary of the university. That's a contract research organization. The total distance to downtown is 30 blocks. We're served by 2 L stop. We have an elevated train here, an elevated train here, and we have a major highway here, and then we have a suburban rail stop. So it's great public and transportation and access from the highways. This is the growth vision for the university park. Come over onto these. These are vacant lots right now, and I haven't figured out how to get the money to do that next phase. You can notice how centrally located we are. These are the highway structure from Chicagoland. We're right here. You can see how all the major highways are provide easy access, and also the 2 airports are 20 minutes from Midway Airport and about 40 minutes from O'Hare Airport. So it's very important, the airports, and so the fact that Tamana is so close to the airport, I think, is very important for your international component of your park design. Here's the master plan. This shows what we did. This, I just showed that to you. The part in red is done, quote unquote, except for one little build out. This is the one we started in 2001, so 2014 we're declaring victory, and now I have to figure out how to do the next building. We have spent a total, between myself and the private developer partner of our park, we spent about $120 million on these 4 buildings. So it's real money, and the reason it costs so much is because it's life science focused. This building alone, the Technology Business Center, where are we? This building alone has got about $60 million in it because the one company called Therapeutic Proteins, they came to my park in 2008 with 2 people. They now have 150, and they've taken over the whole building except for the university research centers. So if you look at the lower level, this right here is where we have what's called the Idea Shop, where we prototype our undergraduate education. All of our undergraduates come into the park and do programs, do project-oriented learning here. This is where our rapid prototyping center is. The first floor are university interdisciplinary research centers, and the top 2 floors are devoted to companies. And this one company, Therapeutic Protein, is in here. So I got a problem because they filled up this whole space. I don't have if a company grows out of my incubator, I have no place for it to go. This is the quality of the space that we have here. The left-hand side is the incubator. This is a wet lab here. This is the space upstairs for the therapeutic proteins. They're actually manufacturing proteins for biopharmaceuticals right now in that space. These are all the things that we provide to the companies. Very important part of our product offering. We have a service directory. We package. This is something to think about as you build out the Tamana campus. We actually have packaged all of the resources, the analytical equipment, make it available at a very low cost that a company, whether some of this equipment is $750,000, and they're able to access it for a very small price. We also have an embedded entrepreneurship center that provides, and our business school are embedded in the tech park complex to provide direct assistance to the startups. The other thing we do is this is all the things that we've organized, conference facilities. So just you think about this extraordinary campus that you are building, the beautiful campus, and you think about that, that is the real attraction for the science park, okay? And coming up with a coherent strategy for how you leverage the resources, the beauty, the facilities, the library, the eating spaces, the conference room. The park doesn't have to build that. This is something to start talking to ITech about. These are the kinds of things that make a difference for a park and for companies to have all of these provided, and they don't have to pay for them. We even have shared conference spaces, shared equipment, all of that. The other thing we do is we have organized all of the resources of the community for the benefit of the companies. We spend a lot of time networking with all of these companies here, and we provide discounted services so companies can easily access and acquire equipment. Finally, these are the logos of all of our life science companies in the park. I can't go through all of them, but I just want to mention, these are the ones I was talking about that actually started out in that chain that we mentioned, that innovation chain, and ended up here being supported in our park. And these are the energy-related companies that I was talking about that are currently in the park. So let me just summarize. We start with quality basic research. That's what you do with university innovation. You have to figure out the fact that you've got access to markets. We are looking for scientific collaborations between the university and companies, both small and large companies. There's got to be an availability of early stage capital in the sequence that companies need from proof of concept through significant venture funding. There's got to be supportive government programs. We've been very well supported by the state, but not kind of as well as we wish for the companies themselves. There's got to be organizations and associations that are catalyzing the cluster and supporting you, because it's very hard for the university to carry on the whole activity. And there's got to be a capable workforce. This is one of the things you really have going for you in Trinidad and Tobago. I mean, the universities are providing the workforce, but you also have a very sophisticated workforce already in place here in the country. And that's going to be a major issue for tech companies that want to move into the park coming in from abroad. And finally, and this is the thing that we have been, I think we're very proud of, is that when you build out that park, particularly multi-tenant buildings, you want to build very high quality space that's flexible, that can last over time, and is going to be an immediate successful sale. Don't undercut the cost. It's been very important for us, because that's what sells a company and provides the real support that they need to be successful. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, I know you may want to ask questions of Mr. Baker, but we ask that you hold your questions to the end. And right now we invite the Minister, Senator the Honourable Fazal Karim, Minister of Tertiary Education and Skills Training, to address you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, our chairperson, for this morning's very important function, Ms. Lorraine Crosby. The Deputy Chairman of the Board of Governors of the University of Trinidad and Tobago, Mr. Kwesi Mituma, our very distinguished guests. We are indeed very grateful that despite and in spite of your challenge, you are here with us, David. We want to appreciate David's significant contribution with a lusty round of applause. Chairman of agencies of the ministry who are here with us, Professor Diana Ransing, President of UTT, Dr. Fazal Ali, Provost, Dr. Alison Williams, my very good friend, who is to be on the board of the National Training Agency, is now your Chief Engineer, UTT, Professor Vincent Sweet, Vice Provost Plan and Development, Professor Valerie Stout, Vice Provost Postgraduate Studies and Research, Mr. Navin Budai. We have with us this morning Dr. Lucy Stewart, who is to be the former registrar of CXC. She's now a consultant to the ministry, and I'll speak about that during this morning's presentation. Members of the media, especially invited guests, ladies and gentlemen. This morning, when you look at the front and you look at the UTT banner, you will see that while we are talking about leveraging the University Science and Tech Park to support, as Professor Narayansing would have told you, growth of innovation ecosystems, you would have seen that UTT's logo talks about, as it expands into words, education for employment, entrepreneurship, and economic development. If we focus on that, it tells us that we are going to be significantly, as a higher education institution, reducing the potential mismatch of skills in our country. Ladies and gentlemen, I recall on the 4th of November, 10 years ago, at the Trinidad Hilton Hotel, when the University of Trinidad and Tobago was launched. I recall as well, maybe around that time, and we have Mr. Ian Marfleet who is here with us, and when I looked at the fly-through, the fly-by, the video you would have seen, I know that's his handiwork. And we would have gotten, and we would have seen that also on national television, done by Aquitas, a very impressive flyby. We would have seen recently as well the flyby that Ian and his team, Jeffrey Abdullah, would have done with Aquitas, with the University of the West Indies Penal David campus. It might be time after 10 years to see whether it is still valid and to look and see how we can re-engineer the presentation for public consumption. You know, when we listened to David this morning, we're reminded that the thoughts are similar, all of those that he would have shared with us, but the action may be short. And therefore we need to move and to step up to the startup. We need to step up to the startup, and I'll tell you a little bit again about that. In my view, as I speak to you this morning and speak with us, we are talking about tech parks. But when you look at parks in Trinidad and Tobago, they have been around for quite a while. We are very proud when you look at the west coast of the Point Lisas Industrial Estate, and that's an energy park. There are many other parks that are a cluster development. And I was there when we started the construction, the whole idea of this Tamana Park. I recall when it started. And therefore it is my view that what we should seek to create through this concept is that UTT must be the leader in excellence of this tech park in this part of the world, not Trinidad and Tobago. I will tell you, I'll go back in a little bit memory for Professor Sweet. We talk about how we can support initiatives like these. And you will see in some of the companies in the United States, while we might not be able to compare with the size and the bottom line or the top line of some of these companies, we do have significant companies in Trinidad and Tobago, though they may be small, with a considerable amount of brain power. I recall when I was a student at the University of the West Indies, seeing the likes of, at that time he would have been postgraduate student Winston Sweet, now Professor Winston Sweet. Walking from the Faculty of Engineering with one of my former teachers at Presentation San Fernando, who is now the chairman of the board of directors of TGU, Trinidad Generation Unlimited, Mr. David Dandridge. He taught me physics. And in that company may have been, at that time, student Guru Mohan Kochar, who is now Professor Kochar as well. We have the power to drive the ideas in this country. And therefore, we will want to be looking at David's model. But let me just say that for all of us, as you would have witnessed the presentation, universities are built on teaching, learning, research, commercialization, and of course, graduation of all of those above who would have gone through the system, and the creation ultimately of jobs, be they self-created jobs or be they jobs that are created by others for us. When I listened to Professor Narayana this morning, and he spoke about life after oil and gas, that is a slogan in Saudi Arabia that led to the development of the KAEC. Whenever I speak, I always see people taking notes. It's good to Google it, because I always like to share information that we can all benefit from. The KAEC, all capitals, refer to the King Abdullah Economic City. While Saudi Arabia, as great as it is in the production of oil and gas and more in oil, and at this time maybe pumps 10 million barrels of oil a day, they too are preparing on the principle and the philosophy of economic cities or tech parks for a possible day when they may not have the reserves that they now do have. It all has to do, for example, I shared this with Navin when he used to work with me, and maybe the time has come for us to look at a new establishment or a new position in the establishment. For example, a university community liaison officer. Very often it is unlike the public relations and marketing department. And very often we are told and condescended upon at institutions of higher learning that they are ivory towers that make little connect with the community. Hence I came up with this university community liaison officer. You see, we cannot encourage persons or attract them by being separated from them. When you look at President Obama, you will see that he's talking about jobs, and he has established a jobs council that really focuses on how education and training, and particularly for me in the tertiary sector, responds to the workforce, as David would have said. It makes little sense if you invest in the taxpayer dollar to create further unemployment because of the mismatch of skills and contributing to the discouraged graduate or the graduate glut. I'll be looking very carefully to improving the quality of the learning outcomes and the graduate from all our institutions in this ministry, regardless of the faculty. You know, David spoke about startups, and while he was talking, he was saying that companies are interested and universities are interested in buying companies and getting them on their plant. I want to tell you what we buy. We may buy companies, yes. But even before that, and subsequent to that, we buy brains. We buy the brains. And if you don't believe me, Google Philip Yao from Singapore Spring. If you have the brains, they bring you to Singapore. They sustain you. And as I talk about Singapore, I think Professor Narayana would have gone. I had advised that they visit that university that I had the privilege to study briefly at, the National University of Singapore. And I saw there, when we went back after I went as a student and I went back as minister, Singapore at the NUS has now started the Venture Lab. You know, David just spoke about a lot of things that David has said we want to put into action. We have the similarity. We have the alignment of the vision. We have to have the alignment of the action. Mona Jamaica, UWI. I was sharing this with Navin. I told him to go look at it. The same principle that David talks about. It's a building. You have cubicles. And every cubicle you have a computer, a telephone, a fax machine. Table, chair. And those who have ideas come in there, and they're university students. And they're supported by business from the community. I'm saying to UTT today, that from today you have less than 1 year to make this happen. You have less than 1 year to make. I'm coming to open that facility. UTT 10 must mean something to all of us in Trinidad and Tobago. And it is easy to create a space where the charity can begin at home first with university UTT students. We must take care of them. I want to tell you something. While we create new campuses, while we look at how do we take care of our graduates, we must also learn how to bring that potential student into the University of Trinidad and Tobago. The University of the West Indies St. Augustine campus, those of us used to go there in the 70s, and I started in 1974, so you can now check my age. Mona, Jamaica used to be the largest campus. St. Augustine campus now has 19,000 students and 3,000 staff. The largest in the entire Caribbean. You know why? Financed by the government of Trinidad and Tobago. As David was asking, will government assist? The government assistance for tuition expenses, GATE, has allowed that campus, and your campus as well, UTT, USC, COSTAT, and all the affiliate institutions to benefit from that. But I want to tell you something else. My wife often tells me that one of the wealthiest places in the world, some of the most expensive real estate property you can find, and David talk about real estate, is the cemetery. That's the place where many ideas are buried and never became life. That's the place where many books have not been written yet, but were intentions. That's the place where many business and inventions and innovations reside, but never came to reality. It is our job now to make sure that the most expensive real estate, that UTT forms part of that. And therefore, I want to suggest to you that you must engender this excitement in the minds of the young boy and girl. I just sit there and I just wrote something I'm just visualizing a jersey. If I'm a young boy in a primary school which is closing today for the Easter holidays, or I'm getting ready to write my exams, my SCA, how nice will it be to have a jersey mark, UTT Future? And you know why? How do we get the brains of those children to be aligned with what we want them to do at UTT? How do we catch them on the CSEC? How do we catch them at Cape? How will they know? It is not only about marketing and strategy and promotion. It is about giving them an O, an opportunity, and an A, an access for another A, achievement, success. I am minded to ask UTT to consider a project called Young Minds or Youth Startup. You may have heard that before, but I'll tell you how we could do it. It is always good for us to come and present, and this is not about David, this is about us from experience in academia. When you ask sometimes an academic for an opinion, he tells you what it should be and what it might not be, but never what is his opinion. You see it sometimes. And therefore I was thinking whether it might not be possible to even consider ideas on the move, finding ideas, the ideas factory, the ideas festival. But let me come back to ideas on the move, or the ideas mover. Why is it impossible to consider a mobile facility, a bus that is so well equipped, a UTT ideas mover or ideas on the move that will go from communities and villages and schools and wherever have you and attract the ideas of people? Why not? There are many people outside there who we look at and we take for granted. The things that are closest to us, we take most for granted. Wouldn't it be nice if you could go down in a remote village and somebody comes up with an idea that they can share with you that leads to the tech park. Let me tell you something. My father went to something called Standard 7. Many of us will know Standard 5 and 6. When you finish primary school, you went on because you hardly could get into any secondary school. He works at Caroni 1975 Limited. He was an electrician. He learned everything right there in Caroni Limited. And the Carry combined cane harvesters that they brought in to replace manual labor in Caroni Limited, one of those machines were given trouble. It was breaking down regularly. And my father built something called a diode, a wire on the side. I remember it as a white little drum, cylindrical drum, small, and an X wire here. And you know what that was doing? It was preventing the fluctuation of current that was shutting down the Carry cane combined harvester. He didn't go to the university. But who would I find him? How would he have been found? There are many persons, we talk to them in the communities, they will tell you how to solve problems. That will startle your mind and tickle your imagination, that will lead to creativity, invention, and innovation. That's what I'm talking about. You have to hit the highways and the byways. Ideas on the move. Find them. That is your future as the University of Trinidad and Tobago. No longer should we wait on them to come. We should go and find them. And you read all the holy books and you will see they didn't wait for them to come. They went and get them. And therefore, you have to define your own competitive strategy. The time has come for us to go beyond not only the boundary, but to go beyond Kariri and to go beyond Nihurst and to get into the realm of UTT, research innovation. It must be the center. You must create that. While you have research all over your campuses, you must have a dedicated facility. And the Tamana Park is an ideal location. Your only constraint is access and mobility. So you may want to consider very early, as David advised us, or even have your dormitory facilities for residential think tanking. Listen, I didn't read this, I just read this in a book. I didn't read this in a book, you know. I am living this. And therefore, I agree with David and I agree with Professor Narayan about the transformation of the economy. But whoever thought that building intellectual power was also a part of diversifying the economy? We are seeing that now. It's not stereotyping. It's how do we do things differently and get a different result. The time has come for us to look at joint ventures. Tamana by itself cannot sustain itself in Trinidad and Tobago. You have to find partnerships to sustain that entity. So the time has come for us, my dear friends, to look at internal partnerships, but external relationships. The time has come for us, and for me and for you, and I want to throw out a challenge today, and I'm going to talk about the research fund just now. I want to ask the University of Trinidad and Tobago to consider helping me to present to the Honorable Minister of Finance and the Economy, who at this time may be reading part of the finance bill, because Parliament started at 10. If you can come up and advise in terms of fiscal incentives to make the tech park work by giving tax breaks or concessions, I'm saying to consider it. Come up with a proposal, how you can make it happen. You determine your bed and how you're going to lie on it. And this will not only be for UTT, this will be for all the tertiary institutions under this ministry. We must be different. We have to create it. You cannot attract people without incentivizing the process. I'll be willing to take that. I saw this in Rochester Institute of Technology. There's a Xerox facility, not only photocopying, there's a business entity of Xerox in Rochester. And many universities have these. So I think it is not only about startup, it is about step up. And therefore, the whole concept of schools, community, industry is very important. I propose to ask the Honorable Minister of Finance and also the Honorable Prime Minister and the Cabinet to consider as well on the advice of the Gate Review Committee, to see whether there are some postgraduate programs that are not being financed now that may be very relevant to the economic development strategy of Trinidad and Tobago, whether we could consider a few more at the postgraduate level for 100% financing. And we must review those at the undergraduate level that have 100% financing and are not leading to sustainable jobs. Listen, you can't be teaching the same thing for 10 years and expecting a different result if the economy is saying something differently. Institutions of higher learning must be responsive to workforce development issues. This is about talent management. This is about building the brain power of our country. And it has to be for sustainable development. You know, we are talking about the whole concept of the science park. The University of Trinidad and Tobago will do well since you are preparing our graduates to be teachers in the education system, and particularly at the primary and secondary schools, to look at the statistics for science and mathematics. And you have Dr. Stewart here, who used to be the registrar of CHC. See what is the performance of our schools in science and mathematics in Trinidad and Tobago. So if you want to have a science and tech park, you know what you have to do. And that is one of the reasons that led me to find the Khan Academy, Salman Khan, that UTT signed on with, where we now have access to 5,000 videos on mathematics and science and other subject areas that people can start learning in their homes as well. And had there not been an unfortunate situation, Laila Ibrahim, the president of Coursera, would have been here in Trinidad this week to launch Knowledge TT, the National Knowledge Gateway. But I have confirmation that she has agreed to come in the month of May, and we're going to launch that. So Coursera will be here as well. Funding is important, and David underscored that very often in his presentation. One tertiary education institution in Trinidad and Tobago, since 2008, had received $50.885 million for research, one. And I decided that as minister, it is important for us to now widen that playing field and have equal access. So that fund is now resident in this ministry. And that fund is called the Higher Education Research Fund, the HERF, where all our institutions in the tertiary sector now has access to that fund through the National Commission for Higher Education. But that NCHE has a mandate to use the HERF to define the HERA, the Higher Education Research Agenda. It must not be what you would like to do. It must be what is necessary to be done. Research must be responsive and relevant and accountable, not simply esoteric. And therefore I am proposing, and you will see it coming out shortly, the criteria for persons to submit their concept notes for grant funding. I propose, and I am taking the lead from David as well, and I told Navin, you're listening to it, we have been saying this too. I propose that UTT will be part of the competition for grant funding of ideas. Prepare yourself. No matter how small it is, you can find counterpart funding. But we cannot continue to say and lament that the percentage of GDP in Trinidad and Tobago for research is too small, 0.01%, and to say that we should be at least 1% and do nothing about it. I propose to do something about it. So the HERA is going to be available. We're going to move from the concept paper to evidence presentation to the realization of the project. And I want to tell you, the students who are going to be the finalists, I'm going to put them on national television. In fact, they're going to be on your channel, the knowledge.tt channel, to present their findings to the national community. You go outside and take a survey. Go downstairs. Go by Citygate. Design a questionnaire, a simple one, and ask 100 people. Do you know what research is conducted that is relevant to your life by our institutions in Trinidad and Tobago? Go and ask them. How do we determine the research policy agenda? Who influences it? Who benefits from it? And like the feedback loop in the communication system, who re-engineers it? What is it? So we must be able to define that. We must have people influence it. And therefore, in that regard, I want to also ask our colleague, Mr. Baker, to consider, and I'm going to ask UTT as another action item today, to consider establishing an advisory committee for your tech park. And if Mr. Baker will be happy to advise and to serve on it, we'll also be very happy for him to nominate or to identify other persons from other parts in the world who have successfully implemented and managed an initiative like this. As a matter of fact, I want to ask Mr. Baker that wherever he has the experience of these tech parks, and you may need to outsource or to direct your research based on our competitiveness and our competitive advantage in Trinidad and Tobago, we'll be happy to do peer research with you and your institutions. And you know, I want us to start publishing, even in an abbreviated form, the research papers for public consumption, not only on website. That's for a certain segment of the market. And let me say as well that that should be available to our students in the secondary schools through their laptops, because it can assist them in their SBA, their school-based assessment. But not only that, you will be connecting with your UTT future. And I'm calling the UTT future, your UTT future student. You know, we have some priority sectors for development. The automotive sector, look at that sector. You tell me one institution in this country of post-secondary learning that does any research at all on the hundreds of thousands of vehicles we have in this country. Tell me one. I'm not talking about outfitting and repairing. None of our institutions have any automotive engineering faculty. Some may do it at UWI or somewhere, but they do it, it's not on a very organized and sustained basis. But there's a market waiting there. So we'll be launching in the month of May the state-of-the-art NESE Automotive Technology Center at Woodford Lodge in collaboration with Neelan Massey, Toyota, Southern Sales, Hyundai, and all the rest of them. That's how you're going to build the capacity. You think the fellow who fixing the vehicle with the carburetor and plugs could interfere with any one of the vehicles now? It's computerized dashboards. And therefore, automotive. Look at aviation. We're going to be constructing through UTT, the aviation campus. Is it impossible for us to have a faculty or a space for aerospace engineering and design? Why not? Lee Kuan Yew did you think Lee Kuan Yew thought about that? Lee Kuan Yew may have said, well, I have no resource, I have a piece of land. But ITE Singapore is into aerospace engineering. NTU Singapore, the Nanyang Technological University that UTT is going to sign on with, has aerospace engineering. Cayenne, not too far from here, maybe about an hour and 3/4 by flight, which is French Guyana, is a launch pad for satellites. We have always been told about the entrepreneurial and the entrepot location of Trinidad and Tobago. We must capitalize on this. Oil and gas, energy, alternative supplies, printing and packaging. I want to tell you, and this is another action item, I'll be launching between now and the end of this year the UTT, first time of any university, the UTT University Press. Get ready for it. You cannot have professors and faculty doing research and you're outsourcing when you have a printer sitting down in El Socorro doing nothing. Cannot. We're going to move that to the Creativity Campus. I think facilities have been prepared. And we're going to launch the UTT University Press. If Oxford could have it, if Cambridge could have it, if MIT could have it, if Northwestern could have it, we can have it here in Trinidad and Tobago too. So UTT Press is coming. Look at Maritime, for example. I boast about the UTT Maritime Campus. You can land a ship from sea to shore with the simulators you have there at UTT. But you listen to people talk, and you know we are waiting with our open arms for when the Panama Canal is opened. That's like saying that I'm waiting for this girl who will come and get married to her. I had a visit right in my office from persons from the British Falkland Islands, the tip of South America. And you know what they came to us for? Although they have about 3,000 to 4,000 people living on those islands, it's about 200 islands, with East and West Falkland being the major ones. A population of less than, say, 5,000. The major export is squid, fishing. But they're preparing that by 2016, they're expecting to drill 500,000 barrels of oil a day. So they came to Trinidad and Tobago because they heard about the NESC. The drilling school, the work we're doing in the energy sector, and they have asked us, and they have asked me, whether I will consider assisting them, and I said yes. And I gave them the name for the facility. I said it will be called the NESC FIT. They said, what is that? I said the NESC, Falklands Institute of Technology, of which UTT must play a part. We have to drive these things. We can't, listen, those who wait in the train station and don't get on the train, miss the train. I want to ask UTT, through this aspect of this tech park and the incorporation of business ideas, to start looking outside now. You are 10 years, you have a lot of brain power, you have capacity and competence, you have commitment and dedication. Start bidding for jobs in the country as well and outside. As professors, if you feel that your class could engage in a project, like Professor Fogg from Stanford University, read about him, FOGG. Professor Fogg has a class dedicated to developing mobile applications. We have to decide what we want to be dedicated for the other 3 Ds, for data-driven decision. And therefore, I want to ask you, I am going to put on very shortly, and you will be part of it too. We'll be talking about, if you look at Georgetown University, you could Google it. My daughter went to Georgetown University. I'm aware of that university. Washington, D.C. You will see that Georgetown University has a series called The Futures of University. You could Google it, see it. Where Professor DeJoya, who I met when I was there, when my daughter graduated, is sitting with somebody else, and in front of a live audience, they're discussing university life, whether it is financing higher education, whether it is quality issue, all of these other things. Why can't we not do it also? So I'm going to start that too. We have to take the repertoire of the rhetoric into the reality outside. How are you going to inculcate the knowledge in our people if you keep it with yourself? This is not about I want to go on this visit, and upon my return I shall share the learnings with my colleagues. How often that happens? Well, we must make it happen. Therefore, if it is that there's a consultancy for number plates in this country, RFID, if it is for one card, TT, whatever it is, and you see it, why not bid for it? Bid for it. And of course, you could decide in conjunction with your board and so on, What will be your percentage and so on that you will leave with the university if you're doing your work using the facilities? But the fact is that you have institutional capacity. That is what David is talking about. How do we maximize the potential for sustainability and growth and development? And therefore, I like when you engage in co-working space, because Singapore, as I often remind people, has moved from collaboration and cooperation to co-creation, creating something new. I often make reference to what happens there. But as I conclude, I want to say to the University of Trinidad and Tobago and to David, my eternal gratitude. I think you are definitely moving in the right direction. We're very proud to have you, David. We value your contribution. We invite you to continue to be a part of the University of Trinidad and Tobago and to assist us from seeing this rhetoric to reality. Thank you very much, and may God bless you.
Okay, we move on to the next item on our agenda, which will be the vote of thanks, and this will be delivered by our Provost, Dr. Fazal Ali.
Senator the Honorable Fazal Karim, Minister of Tertiary Education and Skills Training, Deputy Chairman of the Board of Governors, Deputy Chairman Mutima, Professor Diana Singh, the President of the University of Trinidad and Tobago, Deputy Provost Sweet and Stout, Professor David Baker, Executive Director of UTIIT, Mr. Navin Budai, VP of UTT Business Development, VPs of the University of Trinidad and Tobago, VP Finance and VP HR, Maraj and Raghunanan, professors, fellows, scholars of UTT, Ms. Lorraine Crosby, AO. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Senator the Honorable Fazal Karim asked me a while ago, pointing to a normal glass, he asked me, he held a glass in his hand and he asked me, what is the strategy? It was a very interesting question. It took a couple seconds to come up with an answer. But he later described that the form is informed by the strategy. We certainly do not drink from a knife. Stamina is the receptacle. It is the clear fuel that ignites the slow imagination of Trinidad and Tobago. Meeting Professor Baker yesterday was quite interesting. He noticed this morning when I met him that I asked him nothing yesterday. He reminded me very much yesterday when we spoke with him of the story of Abraham in the Bible and the Quran. Abraham got some instructions to build a little black box in the middle of the desert, and he complained to God that no one would come there. Professor Baker asked for a couple $1 million to build his tech park and his innovation box, and he had to wait for 8 years to get the money to build it. Abraham's complaint was that nobody would come there. Professor Baker had the same complaint. He was told that nobody would come there because he was building just in midway between University of Chicago and the Oxford Cambridge of the US, Northwestern. So he waited for 4 years and his project came off the ground. I think under Minister Fazal Karim, UTT has the opportunity to build and configure our own blue box, because what will come out of Tamina will come out of the blue. Professor Baker has given freely of his ideas and experiences, and he is certainly a sincere partner. He has withheld nothing from us. He has withheld only what we have not asked for or contemplated. His generosity is rare in an age of IP. The UTT is grateful, kind sir, immensely grateful. We strive to be among the grateful, so we may be able to receive more. We are grateful for Minister Karen to host this event today and to invite all stakeholders to this table. Ladies and gentlemen, the future factory is on the horizon. On behalf of the Chancellor of the University of Trinidad and Tobago and our erudite and esteemed President, Professor Diana Reinsing, I thank all of you and I bid you good morning.